and he introduced me to Oxycotin. Started getting involved with strippers. That morning, like I was almost about to lose my job at the sheriff's office. I wanted to get clean. I've been trying to get clean. I just couldn't. When people say, "Oh, just get clean," I couldn't get clean. The demonic oppression in my life was just, I didn't even know how to begin to get clean.
Knock and the door shall be open to you. Seek and you shall find.
I give her uncle some money, and then he comes and he puts some crack rocks on the table. And I'm like, "Is that a good price?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "All right." So then I started smoking crack.
If you're seeking out trouble, you're going to find it. So like knock and the door is going to be opened.
Yeah.
Seek and you're going to find.
And I go to grab him, the guy with the pressure washer. It's right before I grab him, he starts speaking in Spanish, and he turns around and he ripped open my whole stomach right here with the pressure washer.
Arguably, that pornography, it affects your brain more than the drug does.
So I go outside. They slam me up against the car and they send me to jail. They send me to my own jail that I work at.
And it's like that meme where you're looking at him like smug. You're like, watch this. And as soon as you jump, it freezes. And this is the moment he knew he messed up.
Yeah.
Conspiracy about the levees.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't have to get into it on this podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe on another one.
So yeah, man, getting into the drugs. So that's the thing. When then I came back to the sheriff's office, and then boom, I was basically only like smoking weed and stuff. But then I got introduced to the pain pills at the sheriff's office. So when I got introduced to the pain pills, I never forget where I was. I was in the hallway, and I'm not getting into the whole story, but like basically I took a pain pill that day at the sheriff's office, and then ever since then, I just was hooked on it. Like the next day took more, and then. Then as I took more, then I didn't realize I got so physically addicted to it, like I couldn't quit. And then I was spending every day at least, $50 to $150 at that point. And I was functioning. I was going to work. I was the best in my job. Like I was always nice. People liked me, but I was eating the pain pills. Like it just helped my personality. And then getting back to the story you talked about, a little bit of Adderall. One day, my friend, he owed me whatever, so he was like, "Hey, I don't have any pain. I have some Adderall," and I was like, "All right." So I went to go
instead of the pain pills.
Yeah. So one day he said, "Oh, don't take the 30 milligram. Take the 20 milligram."
They're still strong.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there one morning. I used to work the detail from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. at the evidence warehouse, and then the next day I took I was looking it was like 7:30 in the morning. I had to go to work for 8 a.m. and I took a 20 milligram. And like 30 minutes later, I'm tweaking. I'm out of my mind. I call him up. I'm like, "What did you give me? This is crazy. I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm on ecstasy." That's what ecstasy feels like, but a little bit almost like it.
Yeah.
And I feel it. And he's like, "Oh." So then that was when I went on my binge on the Adderall. So then I mixed in the Adderall into my
with
drugs.
The painkillers?
Yeah. For like 2 weeks I was doing that. And then I went back to the pain pills a lot. And then I started getting to my friend introduced me to Oxycotin. And when I got introduced to Oxycontin, they used to had the 20 milligram, 40 milligram, and 80 milligram. The pink ones were 20.
So it almost sounds like you weren't really seeking any of this out. It was just the people you knew were just like, "Hey,
I know got
you
me.
might like this."
So the way that it started, the God's honest truth was, I used to eat pain pills that my grandpa would have. Like he would give me one if I got hurt, but I never was thinking about addictive. It was just I was hurt, and he'd be like, "Here's a Vicodin," because my mom's dad. He was on all kinds of medicine, and he didn't even think about addiction and stuff or have a drug. He just had medicine.
Well, doctors, I mean, they just write it up. Here you go. And I mean, even worse back then.
Yeah,
it's still bad today, but
like you said, it wasn't. I never looked. The person I did the pain pills with was the person who got me started on them. So I never was like, "Hey, I want to eat pain pills." How I got introduced was through them, and then I started eating them, and then boom, started eating them, and then everybody just became like a circle of people. Well, then I introduced to my other friend from high school. I didn't even know he was into it, and he introduced me to Oxycontin. And they're very expensive, but he was a very wealthy family, very rich kid. And the Oxycontin, he would get a deal. They were $40 or $50 all the way up to $60. And I was getting good deals, and he would have the smaller ones. You would put water on them in a paper towel, and you'd take the coating off of them because they'd have like a time release coating. You'd crush them up and snort them, and then I got involved in snorting them, and I was the life of the party.
The faster hit, crushing them up like that.
Yeah, and then doing it, and then in the midst of all that, that's like when that girl that I was dating for like 5 years, 4 years, she broke up with me, cheated on me, did whatever. And when that happened, I literally just did whatever. That's when I got introduced to Bourbon Street. So that's the whole story. When the Bourbon Street, like my Bourbon Street stories. So I was like growing up
So
dysfunctional home.
so all this stuff kind of starts happening, but then when you get associated with Bourbon Street,
Mm-hmm.
that's when things really take a turn
Yeah,
for the worse.
because like you said, I knew about God. Even though I had a dysfunctional home, I knew about right and wrong. I didn't want to hurt people and stuff like that, or like steal from them. But when that happened, then I got introduced to, hey, I started my personality is I can go hang out by myself. I started getting involved with strip clubs. So then I started going out to the strip clubs. Like I got a motorbike. Not my midlife crisis, but like my 20-year-old crisis. So here I am. I got a brand new
sports car. I did the same thing.
yeah. So I bought a Honda Civic Si, a very nice brand new. And then I had a Honda. This was '08, so fast forward. So this was 2008 because I remember it's a '08 Honda that I had. And then I had a 2007 Suzuki Gixxer 750 brand new. That I bought from one of the strippers out there that had like 300 miles on. Anyway, so I started hanging out. I started riding my motorbike out there and hanging out there every night. Well, they start knowing that who basically and everybody's got drugs, so start partying, and then that's how I started just partying. And I remember I would go into these houses and it would just be strippers everywhere and hanging out. And I remember the one friend of mine who's my close friend. She looked at me one time and was like, Vinny, you're too nice of a guy. Like we're damaged and broken, but like you've only been with one person or two people at this time. Like you're not even like on our level. Like they started talking about how many people they slept with and like it's just sex and stuff that we see now. Like everybody's sleeping with everybody. And I'm like, whoa, like I didn't even, when I was with that one girl, that was who I was with. We didn't, and then the one after that, but then when I started using the drugs with them, that's when I started just really wilding out. And that's when started doing cocaine. One night, another family person, that's how I got introduced to cocaine. I remember where I was. I started doing cocaine, but again, I wasn't really addicted to it. Well, this girl that I was dating, the stripper, very nice girl, still my friend, awesome person, just really nice. Just grew up dysfunctional and makes some bad decisions. But they tell me one day at the strip club, they say, "Oh, your girlfriend is on a lot of cocaine." I'm like, "Oh, that's why." And then so I'm like, "I'm not going to judge you. I do cocaine." So then cocaine gets in the mix of that. So fast forward about a month and a half, one day her uncle comes in town. She said, "Hey," April's uncle says, "Hey, I'm going to come in town." Da da da. He's my uncle. Well, I meet the uncle and he's a drug addict, nice guy, but did a lot of cocaine and stuff. Well, my dad dies, okay? Like, he died in 2000. So fast forward another year, 2009. I'm doing a lot of drugs at this point. Doing drugs, a lot of oxys, a lot of pills. Well, my dad passes away in 2009 in March. And then I just started doing a lot more drugs because, that's the thing with drug addicts. Like, I'm going to be just perfectly honest. When I was laying in that morning, like I was almost about to lose my job at the sheriff's office. My life's in shambles. Like I wasn't answering. It was like 10:30 in the morning. I just missed work that day. And then I got a message like, your dad died. See, my dad, he, wasn't around that much. And then he was at the end of his life. I was in shambles. So my dad would always say, "I believe you. I know they owe you this money." Like I had some like default, like some like money that was owed from the sheriff's office. Like that they didn't pay me like $5,000 for a detail. And he was like, just, understanding. And my life was in shambles. Well, then one day I get a call to the hospital. I hear my dad like sick one day, and I get a call to the hospital, and then my dad says, "Yeah, I'm sick. I'm gonna die, and I'm not taking chemo." Well, I was like at this point, I'm like, it's just overwhelming. Like whatever. Like I'm a drug addict. If I don't get my fix, I'm thinking about all kinds. My life's in shambles at this point.
Yeah. Did you know that? Or?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You were self-aware.
Oh yeah. I wanted to get clean. I've been trying to get clean. I just couldn't. And when people say, "Oh, just get clean," I couldn't get clean. The demonic oppression in my life was just, I didn't even know how to begin to get clean. Well, my dad, what happened was they brought him home, and one day my mom looks at him and says, "Yeah, the doctor said 2 weeks." I said, I know somebody just passed away. He don't have that much longer. And 2 days later, he died. And then my mom got a settlement, and then basically paid for me a lawyer, bought me some clothes, and then like put a down payment on brother's house and stuff, bought him a car and whatever.
Yeah.
And then I got an apartment for a whole year and paid for and stuff, and then I lost my job at that point, like right after that, during the midst of it. So basically, I had lost my job. I'm living with strippers all in my house. I'm letting whoever wants to be there. I'm playing Madden all day, and I'm doing drugs. Well, then crack cocaine. That's when crack cocaine came in my life through April, her uncle. One night, because my dad used to smoke crack a lot, and I found that out later.
So essentially, it was Bourbon Street. Just so I can.
Yeah, Bourbon Street.
It was Bourbon Street. Then your dad died, and then the cocaine.
Yeah, the Bourbon Street. Yeah, I met those people, and I was partying, and then I was still doing drugs. Then my dad passed away, and I was hanging out with those Bourbon Street people still. So, and then I had an apartment in Metairie. Then I had her house was in.
Now, did you
in Mid City?
I guess did it help you? I don't know the right word to use for it, but it's kind of like when you feel sad about something, so you end up just binge eating, to make yourself feel better. Was that also a form of it when, your dad passed away? You feel bad about yourself knowing that you shouldn't be doing these things. So you're like, you know what? This ecstasy, this cocaine makes me feel good. I'm going to just jump more into it and give way to those vices.
I didn't learn about, like, trauma and stuff. I just thought that's just what it was. I never identified until, like, recently with my wife and understood, like, hey, the attachment disorder I might have or how I associate with people or conversate. Like, the being that, because I knew I was dysfunctional, and it did make me feel good. And then what happened was my dad used to smoke crack, and then April said, hey, you don't like your dad because he smoked crack. You're mad at him, basically. Like, don't be mad at him. Well, like 2 days later, I give her uncle some money, and then he comes and he puts some crack rocks on the table. And I'm like, is that a good price? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, all right. So then I started smoking crack. And then when I was smoking the crack, and then, basically, even one night when I met April, like just a crazy random story, I'm on Bourbon Street. It's Lundy Gras, Monday morning. Working. I just got off of work. I'm picking her up at like 4:30 in the morning from the club. Her uncle's in town. We know each other now. And they're coming out the club, and these people were pressure washing the street, like, because it was a Monday before Mardi Gras, like that morning. Yeah. Mardi Gras day is actually that day. It was just, they were cleaning up. So it's actually Tuesday. And they were cleaning up the street, and they were spraying water, and they hit like water on them. So they're all screaming, her uncle and stuff. Well, they point the pressure washer at the at them, and they're like, "Oh, you're not gonna shoot me, whatever." Da, da. So I'm like, "Man, what's going on?" So basically, the guy with the pressure washer, there's like 8 of them that work for a company, spray this guy and spray at her uncle, and he gets all cut up and everything. So then I go across the street. So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to her, and I'm like, I'm a brown belt, like a real Japanese jiu-jitsu brown belt, like know a lot of different throws. So I was like, man, I'm gonna go judo throw this guy, and it called a ukiwaza, this drop throw. So he turns his back, he's like 20 yards away from me, and I run at him, and I go to grab him, the guy with the pressure washer. He's one of them. And then the guy starts, right before I grab him, he starts speaking in Spanish, and he turns around and he zaps me, and he ripped open my whole stomach right here with the pressure washer.
Oh, wow.
So I'm ripped open.
That's insane.
Yeah, I'm ripped open. That's not even the crazy thing. So I'm ripped open. I used to always fight a lot on Bourbon Street, so I always take off a shirt. So I had like undershirt underneath me. So he rips through all the shirts. I fall and think, I'm like, I'm a sheriff at the point. I'm still a sheriff. I'm getting my timeline mixed up, but I'm a sheriff at the point. I'm like, I'm a sheriff. He goes, the guy who speaks English says, oh, you shouldn't have did this. So I'm sitting there. I go to call my brother, who's at NOPD Narcotics. He works street clothes narcotics. He works on Bourbon Street. So I go to call him. The lines are crazy because it's Mardi Gras,
Yeah.
So it wasn't going through. So I'm sitting there with April, and all of a sudden I hear, all of a sudden I tell April, I said, he's about to go get a gun. The guy who got shot, the African-American guy, all like in the face, I'm like, he's about to go get a gun. She's like, no, he isn't. I'm like, yeah, he is. So he literally...
Like you shot him with the pressure washer in the face?
Yeah, all in
I think you may. I don't know if you had mentioned that. You just said that you got hit with it.
Yeah, he shot the guy when he was spraying in the street. He sprayed them as well, and he got them. And then he sprayed me as well, real bad. But I didn't know the extent until later of how bad he got the guy. But I just knew they were, after he hit him, they were screaming, cursing. He's going to do something. So, and then I know how they, like, they don't play in New Orleans. If you talk crap to them, like, so anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
He goes up, he walks in the middle of the street, and I'm just sitting there, and he goes, doom, doom, doom. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm like, we take off running. I'm running down the street. We run her uncle, me, her uncle, Mark, and myself. And my brother's name is Mark also, but April's uncle's name's Mark. So I run all the way to my car, probably like a half a mile away. We're out of breath. We get in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all cut up. And they're like, dude, he just shot that guy. And we're like, oh my gosh. And then I'm like, I'm supposed to be at work. Like I'm all like, I'm a sheriff. Like, what's going on? So my brother calls me back on the phone, and it came through. And my brother says, Vincent, can you believe they said somebody's shooting on Bourbon Street? I said, Mark, they are shooting on Bourbon Street. Stop being a super cop. I was involved. He goes, what happened? I said, Mark, I got to go. I'm cut open. But yes, they really were shooting on Bourbon Street. Because he thought it was like some kind of just stupid call. Well,
That's your brother.
yeah. So
you're like, yeah, just trust me.
Yeah.
I don't want to, don't worry about it. I just know that it's happening.
Yeah. So whatever. What happened was the guy, because I worked at the jail, so I ended up seeing that same guy got shot in the face, and he had like that keloid skin, like that pressure washer ripped him all open. He had cuts, but it blinded him in one eye. And he was a manager at Famous Door. The guy messed up his eye real bad, and he ended up, like, I was in a lawsuit with him, like we were suing the company together, and I won the lawsuit. But he says the guy who went to jail, the guy hit in the face because they like railroaded him, like blocked him, which I believe too. They put him in, who knows what really happened. Well, yeah. Just like Bourbon Street, man, like stories my brother, I would sit, like, I think it was called like the Green Lantern, not the Green Lantern, one of the green, right by the House of Blues off of Decatur. They had some kind of club. It was like 5 a.m. And all of a sudden we're sitting in there, because after the strippers would go all to, the Copper Monkey, Deja Vu. They would all have these like late night spots where you would eat, and then they would have like the late night, like morning club, like during the weekends you can go to, like Escapades and Metairie, or what's that other one? I forgot. The Ampersand's was another, like, everybody's on drugs kind of thing, sunglasses on type of thing.
Yeah, like you were saying, you knew where to find it. You were familiar with the territory.
Yeah, and one day we're sitting there on Decatur, and they just start shooting up. We're inside the bar, and you just hear gunshots everywhere. And I peek my head out, and all of a sudden my brother's peeling out backwards in a cop car, and he looks at me. He's like, Vincent, what are you doing? And he's like, get inside. I'm like, I'm looking at, it was like, I think it was Club Ambrosia. They just had people running everywhere shooting. Another story. It was Halloween, the last time I celebrated Halloween. I think it was 2011. I was on Halloween hanging out, and all of a sudden they just started shooting everywhere on Canal Street, and people were just, shoot. I didn't see actually people get shot. You just hear, you hear them running. Well, I see my brother running up the alleyway in street clothes, because he was in the 8th District Narcotics, and he's got a gun. He's chasing with the other guy, and so my brother was always mixed in, with the things. But my brother would never have to get me out of trouble or anything, because, like, people knew in New Orleans, nobody bothered me.
It almost sounds like you were always there, though.
Mm-hmm. Like, always on Bourbon Street. Always so every night.
Like, something happens, your brother shows up on a scene, and you're there like, hey, how's it going? And
yeah.
He's like, why do you have to be here?
Exactly. And my brother he was always looking out for me. Even my brother told me, your life is going to, fall apart if you don't get together. Well, that was the thing, man, hanging out on Bourbon Street. And that's where I learned a lot of it's just, hanging out and me having a personality. I mean, the stories of just getting into like some just random people's houses, like, 5 a.m, you walk in houses and this person's tied up having sex here. It's like just crazy, demonic, like the human being. That's why, like, I'm very careful with my children and with everybody, because I know how dark I've seen, like, a really, really dark world. And I worked at the sheriff's office for 5 years, and I worked all of magistrate court. So I handled everybody that was arrested, all the way from misdemeanor marijuana all the way up to murder. They went through me. So I've seen, like, people.
So something interesting is, so the Bible, and I'm going to refer to it because it says it's the best way. Knock and the door shall be open to you. Seek and you shall find, right? And basically, like, pursue after him. Like, pursue after a thing and you'll find it. When you reference the Bible, it's a good thing, and it sounds like you're trying to achieve a good thing, like something in business or making money, or just pursuing your endeavors. But it works in the exact opposite way. If you're seeking something bad, like if you're seeking out trouble, you're gonna find it. So, like, knock and the door is gonna be opened. Seek and you're gonna find. And what you were doing is you were going all the way in.
Yeah, and like you said, if you just roam around and have personality and you just go to the clubs, like I rode my street bike and people know you have connections or whatever, you just sit at a bar and people are like, hey, you have cocaine, or hey, you want to come to my house? And you just end up in these like Theo Vaughn is another guy, kind of reminds me of his stories. Like it's like that's what it was, man. I would just going out on a random, Thursday night, Friday night, and it would turn into this
Now, did people
come
know
home.
you were a sheriff's
Yeah,
officer?
they knew, and like so.
But they knew you were cool. You weren't going to rat them out.
And that's why you don't find any photos of me or pictures. You won't find any from like my mom might have a few in here and there because I knew I was always doing like I didn't want people taking photos of me and stuff. And like I was really good at my job. And I would always help out the inmates and I would always do good. But at nighttime, like I was involved in the drugs, and there would be nights where I'd come to work still. But I've never arrested anybody for drugs or anything. I was over the court system. So I wasn't like being such a hypocrite where and like I would help out the inmates, and I would always, I always had
Yeah.
I was always more kind, but the drugs made me really violent and made me make poor decisions. But like I said, when I was doing the Bourbon Street, like all this craziness, running around, run to the streets, I mean, I at that point there was no like, hey, I'm going to church. There was no whatever, and then that's when everything after I lost my people robbed my whole house, basically the people living
Yeah,
there.
coming back to losing your father and now having people over at your house.
Yeah, losing my father, and then having all these people at my house, and then I went to rehab for like an outpatient, inpatient for a couple of days, and I came back and like my Tempur-Pedic, all my stuff that my grandma had bought was all gone. They
Did you send yourself to rehab or?
Yeah, I had went many times. I mean, even one night, another story, a crazy story was the guy I sent. Went to get my outpatient was all set up. When my dad died, I came to my mom. I said, "Mom, look, I got a drug problem." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I got a drug problem." She's like, "What do you?" I said, "Mom, I got a drug problem." She's like, "What do you need?" I said, "Look, I need this." So she spent like the money, like the grand, to do the outpatient to get the Suboxone. So I got all these prescriptions and everything ready to start tomorrow. When
No, before you keep going, was it hard for you to come to your mom and tell her that, or?
Not hard. I mean, it was just hard to find out how we're gonna fix this situation. Because at this point, I still have my car. At this point, I lost my motorbike. I wrecked it, but I still have my car at this point, and I still have my job.
You still had like a resemblance of your, not your past life, but how you can possibly turn it around. You had a way to fix it.
Yeah,
still.
I knew the drugs, but I still had income coming in. But the drugs were just at this point, people didn't know how much I was spending, and that's why I told my mom. I was like, "Look, why do you think I don't have money? Like I'm spending like $3,000 a month on this right now," and that's when I, just totally lost control. Well, that night when I was at April with her uncle, I sent him to go. I was like, "Hey, go get these drugs." So he goes get the drugs. I'm laying in bed and I'm like, can't wait to get these drugs. Can't wait to get. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. All of a sudden, I hear the door shut. Boom! I'm like, all right, my drugs are here. I get up, and then her uncle saying the police are outside. He led them on a police chase to the house. So as he's coming in, I'm like, they cannot come in this house. So I go outside. They slam me up against the car and they send me to jail. They send me to my own jail that I work at.
Today's sponsor is America First Advertising. Looking to boost your business's visibility? Meet America First Advertising, your go-to solution for digital signage and space. With networks spanning from Baton Rouge to Mississippi, they offer 25 screens in each network. Those locations in high-traffic venues like Walmart, Subway, doctor's offices, restaurants, and gyms. So you can imagine your ad being seen over 1,350 times in a single week. Ready to start your advertising? You can visit AmericaFirstAdvertising.com, or you can give them a call at 985-615-2680. America Advertising, where your business comes first. I would definitely recommend using these guys. Their screens are literally all over. I can't go anywhere without seeing a screen. So it's highly likely if you're sitting at a restaurant for 30 minutes to an hour, you're gonna see your ad. If you're interested, AmericaFirstAdvertising.com, or you can give them a call at 985-615-2680.
So I go outside. They slam me up against the car and they send me to jail. They send me to my own jail that I work at. So I go to my own jail. I'm in socks and a t-shirt and shorts, and I get all these charges, evading the police, all this stuff. And I'm telling the cop, I'm like, I'm not even driving the car. Well, April comes outside and she's crying. She's looking at me. She's like, my uncle's, because he thinks he might be in trouble. So he's smoking crack, just thinking he's going to go back to jail because he's such an addict.
So why were the police there again?
Because he led them on a chase. They saw him buying the drugs.
And he came to your house?
He came back to the house because he didn't want to go back to jail.
Like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah. Why are you coming here?
And then they couldn't come in the house. So instead of letting the police run in the house and whatever else, because I live with a bunch of like, you know, people, bartenders, strippers. It was the whole house. It wasn't in my name.
We'll call them degenerates. You know?
Yeah. So like, I went to jail for that, and then like, you know, that's another story. Like, God is my witness. Like, I wasn't driving the vehicle at all.
I'm curious though. The people that you went back to the jail that you worked at, so you probably know some of the prisoners.
Yeah, well, I went there.
Did they recognize you and like, why are you here?
Well, no. So I only went to jail for 15 minutes. The deputies were like, "Hey."
So you didn't even get past their.
So fast forward, because I'm gonna get to like, you know, the meat. Like fast forward, like I lose my job. I headbutted an inmate. And I had headbutted an inmate and whatever, and they made an example out of me, and I understand why and everything like that. So they got rid of me. Then they gave me my check, like mailing my whatever, all those years I put in. So I had some money saved up, and then just party. And then I still had money, like when my dad died right there, so I still had money paying, you know, my mom would give me money or whatever. But when I had lost like everything, that's when I, you know, just started wiling out. And then I moved back in with my grandma. When I lost my car, wrecked my motorbike, had no income, and then I just got full-fledged on drugs. And then I moved back in with my grandma. Well, I moved in with my grandma, and then one night I'm hanging out with a guy. He's passed away. My friend Joe. He died in the neighborhood.
That's a great name, by the way.
Yeah, and I just basically taking some drugs, tripping out, and I ended up going to House of Detention, HOD, the same jail where my family and I worked at and stuff. And I did 22 days there. And you asked about how the inmates liked me. Like, I put them on house arrest. They kept me on like the mental floor, the 10th floor, because I was coming off of drugs for like 4 days. But when I came off of drugs, I was in regular population, and I could have got out immediately like before, but I was just in such rebellion. So then I got out of jail. Then I roamed the streets for like 2 days.
Did you have access to drugs in jail?
Oh yeah, we were drinking. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Like, look, we were making. They had the cocktails, like all this stuff. This was back when they made the video on OPP. It was just like that. They had the they made the alcohol, and I was friends. They were smoking the peas and stuff. See, I worked in the court system, so I didn't really work in the jail like to monitor them like full time. But I was trained in the jail, so I didn't know like the ins and out of what they actually did in the jail. But going there, living with them, yeah.
But they knew you.
Yeah, because I'd help them out on house arrest.
What's crazy is you were you were a sheriff, then you went into, you know, as in you don't know what's going on, but outside of work you were partying, and then you go into jail and you're like, well, I guess I'm back at work and I might as well keep partying.
Yeah, and they were like trying to make me come through the like Vasquez, because they call me out like, what's wrong with you? Because I for like a week there, 3 days I was really out of it. Like they would like hit me with medication to get me back, and then I came to. But what's crazy was when they put me on the regular population, I beat up a guy really bad that first day because he was talking like he was messing with this gay guy or whatever. And like I said, I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, I know people always claim that, but like really are. So like,
well, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
everybody says they can fight until you actually have to fight, and
so
they learn they probably can't fight.
Exactly. And like, you know, in jiu-jitsu, Osotogari, Kosotogari, Tayatoshi, Ippon Sanagi, and Morotsu, like different judo throws. So I threw him in Kosotogari, this guy, and just punched him a couple times. Well, because he was just whatever. And they were like, yeah, see, whatever. They call people captains. So captain, like, you know, they know I'm a captain before, like, even though I'm not a captain, I was just a deputy. But that's call you, hey, cap, get that's what they call it. The inmates call the sheriff's deputy. So they would call me that. Well, long story short, like 2 weeks later, I'm sleeping in my bed. I finally get in the bed and the guy, they're like, yeah, he's about to stab you, the guy I beat up. So they're sitting he's making his little night. I'm like, I'm at this point, I'm so aggravated. I'm like, I don't even care. He can do whatever he wants to do. Like, I'm going to hurt him again. Well, then he was like so annoying. Everybody in that cell, they just jumped him, beat the crap out of him, boom, threw him out the cell. So then I'm thinking, man, when am I going to get out of jail? Like, what am I charged here?
You had some rep within, you know, you had a good reputation within the jail then. If somebody warned you about him, that means they liked you. And if they jumped him, then that means they also liked you. As in, like, I don't know how to say it, but like in jails, there's cliques, but there's also like reputation. Like there's a hierarchy and where you rank. So
Yeah.
even though you were a sheriff, they still saw you as one of their own.
Yeah, and because the God's honest truth is I helped out so many of them get on house arrest. I was in charge of house arrest. I could get people at the intake. I knew the central lockup was connected to magistrate court. So like if they needed somebody processed out, I could tell my friend, hey, process them out, it'd take 10 minutes instead of the paperwork getting lost for like 20 hours. So people knew I had a heart to help people, and like even though we would get in fights sometimes with inmates, I never disrespected them like that. I wanted their rights to them. I never, people would say I never gave them drugs. I never gave them anything illegal. I just had respect with the inmates, and they knew that I don't play. Like don't mess with me.
As a
Yeah,
person.
and if you got out of line back then, there was no negotiating. You get a beat down real quick, and that's just how it was. And we were like, and my talk was, look, I want y'all to get out of jail. I don't know why y'all are here. Don't speak on the screen, but I'm here to help y'all. And I really just showed them a lot. And that was when, after Katrina, when they didn't have a lot of the phone calls, people didn't have the meals. It was all mixed up. It was like the lights were going pitch black. Like if I had a pen on me and showed like all the stuff that went on, like undercover, it would be unreal, because it was like people just in like 5-man cells, 15 of them. The light, it was 100 degrees inside because they had no air conditioning right after Katrina, like right when I came back after I got my wires. Like it was wild, and I treated them, make sure they got phone calls. I went above and beyond. People called me like an inmate lover. Then they turn around when I headbutted a guy who beat his wife up and was a bad person. I got turned around and I was guilty of it, but I don't regret what I did. I did it to him. And then they made an example out of me because they knew about drug problem and they knew that I had problems. But getting
You weren't, and I want to say this, you weren't a bad guy, but like anybody, you had your own issues.
yeah, exactly. Like
You
if
still
met me,
you still had morals, you still had beliefs, whether you went against them with drugs or went out or maybe made bad decisions. I'm not even gonna say maybe made bad decisions. You did make bad decisions.
Yeah.
But you were still, at the end of the day, I mean, you were a good guy. You wanted to do the right thing. You were just making wrong decisions.
Yes, exactly. And the thing
Which
was,
a lot of people don't see in people. Like it's hard to see the good in people, especially if somebody's in a prison, because people try to treat them like they're less of a human or like they're less deserving of something. If that makes any sense. There's no compassion.
And like I always say, like even this interview, people were like, where did Vinny go? Like what's his story? Like, oh, he was if you'd have all different types. Like, different day you met me. If it was the drugs, you met me on a bad day. Detox, I was either tired or mad. All happy on the drug. So yeah, so people, I always try to do the right thing, but the drugs had such control of my life. And then fast forward in the sheriff's office, getting fired and getting all that, then losing my job, and then basically just roaming around on the streets. In and out of jail. Then I just roamed around the streets. I didn't have a car for like three or 4 years or something. So I would just roam the streets, and I would just go looking for drugs. And every time you gave me some money, I would just use the drugs.
So, what was your and I didn't mean to cut you off, but what was your come to Jesus moment? Because you had mentioned that you went to rehab once or twice. You even funded it somewhat yourself. But you're in a bad off place and you recognized that you need help. But what was the process? Because I'm sure it wasn't just like a one-stop shop. You did something and it fixed everything. But what was the process of like fixing that?
So like before I even broke my heel, I think I shattered my heel. So getting to that story, I was talking, getting back to Adderall. I was wilding out, and then I met this girl. Unbeknownst to me, I went to high school with her. Long story short, like she didn't care if I didn't have a job, her family, whatever. I was in church at my grandma's house, trying to get clean, in and out of church, trying to get clean, going to church with meetings with my grandma when she drove me. And then I met this girl, and then I fell into sin even way, way worse. And then I was, got into more alcohol, mixed it with the pills, but then I got into Adderall. And when she got prescribed Adderall, I was eating like 90 milligrams.
That's a lot.
90 milligrams a day, and she would go off to work and I would be at home, and that's when I got addicted like pornography, because it excels, and I was just watching pornography, and it was the worst I'd ever been, but she didn't care.
I would say arguably that pornography taints your mind more than a drug will, because pornography is a drug in of itself, but it's not a physical thing that you take. But I would say that arguably it affects your brain more than the drug does.
And you're right. A lot of people, when I talk to young people, I tell them all the time. I say, "Look, I'm gonna give you three things," or I usually just say, don't drink any alcohol, don't gamble, stay away from steroids, and I always say pornography is bad, and they always laugh. And people don't know the effects that it has on your mind. And when you're watching it, like you said, it has more of that. The drug you could put in your system, get it out, but the pornography, that has lasting effects, and the society hasn't even come to know how much it's damaged, because people think it's just trivial. Oh, it's but doing this, basically eating all that Adderall. One day, I ended up cheating on my girlfriend with my ex-girlfriend. Blah 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 blah. She comes home. I come home like I'm leaving. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just whatever. She's like, no, don't leave. Don't leave. I'm gonna take you on a trip. So the next day, like, I was still up from Adderall, just acting crazy. She went and bought me some clothes, and we're hanging out. And I'm like, whatever. We go to the Hard Rock Casino, and I was actually there last night. Not the Hard Rock Casino, but the across the street in Biloxi. I was at another hotel with that marriage retreat, and I saw the Hard Rock Casino. What happened was, we went to the Hard Rock Casino. I get there. I'm like, oh, this is cool. We're talking. She's like, please don't leave. Let's, she'll buy me whatever, Well, then she tells me, hey, go to the car. Go get this out the car. This, her bag, her shoes. So I go to get the stuff out the car. Well, I start on that Adderall. I'm still tweaking. I start roaming around the hotel. And I went into an employees only room, and I remember they had a big table. It was like a 15-foot table at the Hard Rock Casino. And I walked in, they had 10 people sitting at it, and I was like, they're like, can I help you? And I said, no. They're like, what's your name? I said, Jack. And they said, she said, security. So look, they started chasing me all around the casino, the hotel casino. Well, I run out a door, and I end up on this ledge, and then I run another straight forward another 30 yards, and it makes an L shape, and I look to my left, and they're coming at me, I guess 6 people.
So you were just wandering around this casino, and
drugs, yeah.
Were you causing trouble at all?
Well, yeah, well, I was going in places I shouldn't have went.
Oh,
so,
employees only.
Yes.
So they were like, who the heck are you?
So getting back to the power of the mind, I just had watched the Adjustment Bureau, and they disappear in different hats and stuff. Have you ever seen that? So yes. I was on tweaking so bad, I thought I was in a movie at this point, because I've been up for days, and that's how far my blind was.
You thought you were the man.
Yeah. So they kept me on the ledge, and I look at them, and they were I guess 75 yards from me at this point, and then I go to jump. To look, because it's 20 feet down. I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna do a MacGyver roll.
What is this, the second story?
Yeah. Second story parking garage. It was 23 feet up, and it's high up. Looking back now, and it's super high. And they were like, no. And I look at them, and I make the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, and I jumped off. And when I jumped off, I landed on my heel, and it felt like lightning. Just electricity went through my body, and I remember saying, I give up. And I just fell flat on my face. And then I'm laying there. So then I'm in this. When they're chasing me, Joe, the craziest thing was I went into a closet like the Adjustment Bureau. People will laugh if you've seen the movie. And when I went in the closet, I didn't disappear. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is reality. I'm not in a movie. And your brain on drugs is so twisted you can't understand. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. So when they cornered me, when I jumped off and I felt like the lightning, and I'm laying on the ground, I said, man, I'm gonna play like I'm dead. I'm not gonna move. So they come there, don't touch him, don't touch him. And I'm all curled up, and I'm just laying there, and I got my little tag watch on, and I'm all curled up, and they're like, he's all right. And he's like, what's wrong with him? You could just hear the presence of people around me, but I'm not opening my eyes. I'm not doing anything. I'm just playing like I'm dead.
I'm almost focused on the few moments right before you jump, when you look back at them, and it's like that meme where it's you're looking at him smug. You're like, watch this, and as soon as you jump, it freezes, and it's this is the moment he knew he messed up.
Yeah, and the moment when I hit the heel, the lightning, and I realized, and I remember I said, I give up, and I just fell forward, and I just laid on the ground, and then they sternum rubbed me, they put the ammonia, they said, man, this guy's hardcore. I'm convinced, I'm not gonna. Then they bring me to the hospital, and they shoved the tube down my throat. They were doing all kinds of stuff, and then they hit me, and I came to, and they go, there you are. And then they put me in the hospital for a couple of days up there, and then I came back.
Where was your girlfriend?
Yeah, she found me.
She found you outside, or?
Yeah. They found me. That the police had to tell her. They had to. It was like an hour and a half later.
She's probably just like, where did he go? I just sent
Yeah,
him
yeah.
to the
And she
car
was
to go
all
grab something.
crying. She was all crying and freaking out, and I'm just like, whatever. you
That's
know?
got to be crazy for her. I mean,
Yeah.
even if she is or isn't on drugs.
No,
I
she's
mean,
she's the best. She'll probably see this, but she's a super nice
Yeah.
person. Great
I'm
person.
just saying for her
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like,
yeah. She
I
was
just sent her
freaked
to
out.
the car.
Yeah.
And he's playing Inspector Gadget upstairs, hiding from the
And
officers, and now jumping 2 stories off a building.
Yeah, and she knew I was a hot mess, and like she would overlook it because she just whatever. But you know, she didn't. Really, she was just worried that I was hurt.
Yeah.
And then I came back in town and I had the emergency surgery, the calcaneus fracture, and they were like, "Listen, you're not going to bounce back from this," because I had broken so many bones.
What is a calcaneus
It's
fracture?
it's a heel. It's your heel, calcaneus, and it's a trauma injury. So only like 10% of all the breaks are heel fractures, but you don't recover. And I shattered mine in 4 places, and the only reason I didn't have my back shattered because I was on a lot of steroids at the time. My back was really strong. Because they were like, man, you jumped, you didn't shatter your back. And I was like, the way I landed, it was another blessing that I didn't shatter my back. But they brought me in the hospital. I had that emergency surgery. And then 10 days later, this was my come to Jesus moment. I was at Celebrate Recovery 8 days later, like 8 days after my first surgery. And I'm having to go up 3 flights of stairs. They say I'll never recover. I'm doing research at this point. Like, dude, this is a serious, it's like the worst break you can have. And they prayed for me at Celebrate Recovery and said, oh, healing and all this stuff. So I'm like, whatever, you know. Well, 2 days later, I go to my checkup, and they pulled off the cast. I had a really bad infection. They had to do emergency, put me in the hospital. And then when they put me in the hospital, they told me, oh, your pins had shifted, all this stuff. The next day when I woke up from the surgery, or the 2 days after when I had the surgery, they said, oh, your pins didn't shift, like da-da-da-da. It's like a miracle. Like, and that's when I woke up, like, really with my Bible, started reading my Bible, and I started telling, like, her I want to go to church. And then fast forward, you know, I'm always going to church, and then she ended up, whatever she did, left me, and I ended up at my brother's house. And then 2 weeks into my brother's house, I ended up overdosing at my brother's house. They put me in the hospital, and then I say, man, they come a day later again to see me. There's police all over my brother's house. And then it was like normal, like the neighbors. I'm not thinking now, like imagine police everywhere in your neighborhood. That was just something that came with me. So I was wondering why, like
followed you around.
Yeah, like I
But
didn't think anything of it. Like I thought
said
it was
you-
bad, but not too bad. Like, you know.
You said you overdosed in the hospital?
No, I overdosed at my brother's house. So
that's what
that
it
girl
was.
broke up with me. I ended up at his house. I overdosed. I ended up
So
in the
you had just
hospital.
Got out the hospital maybe, or?
No,
I'm trying to follow.
well, so yeah, so this is like I break my heel and then I'm in recovery for like months. Okay, with that girl, like this is like 4 months after I got I'm finished with the cast and everything. So like 6 months after, the girl breaks up with me after, and I end up at my brother's house. I'm still using, and then I use at my brother's house. I OD, and then he tells me the next day at East Jefferson, you need to go to rehab. I said, no, I'm a picky eater. I won't go. Da, da, da. So then you don't have a place to live. And I was like, I'll go to Bourbon Street. I'll do whatever I want. You know, I'm not giving in to nothing right now. I want to get help, but on my conditions. Like, you're not shipping me off. I need to. And then 2 weeks later, that was like my come to Jesus moment. I was at a church, Irish Italian Day 2013 parade. It was a Sunday night, and I was just laying on church. And I'd been to church, like I was always at church my whole life, whatever. And the Lord spoke to me, and I was just laying on the floor. It's probably about 8:40 p.m. and the Lord spoke to me and says, I'm going to heal you. Tell your brother you love him. And I'm like, what? I didn't say like Jesus come in my heart, nothing. And I just felt a real peace. I'm like, I'm laying on the floor. I'm like, what's going on? And I'd had those encounters. So like, but I'd never had like literally speak to me. Like,
So you actually heard
yeah,
words.
like spoke to me.
What did
like,
it sound like?
Just like that. I'm going to heal you. Tell your brother you love him. It was just like, and I was just like, what?
Like you couldn't describe the voice. It was just.
Yeah, it was like, you know, your intuition, but it was like you knew. It wasn't like when you're led by the Spirit, you might feel like, hey, I know this is the Spirit lead me. No, it was like, tell your brother you love him.
He speaks in a still small voice, but this was loud.
No, I was on the floor. It was just like that. It was just.
Oh, as in like,
yeah.
You just.
I'm gonna heal you.
Okay.
Tell your brother you love him. At that
knew.
point, I was a state hospital person, so I was on lithium, back and forth off of a lithium for a long time, which is like 1,500 milligrams. So you know, like that's a serious. Like they thought I was to buy all this stuff. I was on Zyprexa, over $800 a month. I was getting prescribed, and the state hospital, the psychiatrists, they were like, basically you're an addict for life. Like that's who you're gonna be. Like you can only contain it. So basically, when that happened, I just got up. We were walking around church and whatever. My brother was picking me up that night. It was his ex fiance baby mama that he has his child with. It was my nephew who was like 8 years old at the time. And I told him, I said, Mark, God told me to tell you I love you and he's going to heal me. And my brother turned around. He said, Vincent, I got a house note and a car note. Like, you need to get your life together. Like, I told you your life. Like, basically didn't even think anything of it. Well, then I just started pursuing after God. And then they broke up, him and his girlfriend, like a month later, and then my brother started going to church, and I just got plugged in. I mean, when church was open, I was at Bible study. I was at church Monday to whenever there was church, and then a professional boxer named Dominic Carter, basically that I met through another person I was sinning with, this person.
Yeah.
I met him. He was not sinning, but he knew, and she told me, yeah, talk to him. He can help you. So I called Dominic up one day. I met him one time, in person, but then I called him and he came over. He said, where you at? And I said, I'm over here in Metairie. He picked me up, fed me, and then he took me in his house and he told me, like, you're gonna wake up at 6:30 in the morning, like basically relearn life, and brought me everywhere I needed to go.
Did you have a job at this time?
No, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a job at this time for like 3 years. The
Okay.
girl that I was dating, that whole time I was dating her, like a year and a half, she had money. Like I
was just-
partied.
okay.
It was like
She was
like the
enabling you.
demons. Yeah, when it talks about the demons will flee and they come back like way stronger, that's how it was with her. She was a nice girl, but we partied. Like, so I was always partying.
But this Dominic guy took you in and gave you a regimen, something to follow.
Yeah, he took me in, and then so he took me in, and he would make me wake up early, and then like for just nothing, and he would go to work, and then he got me a job at the convention center, at the Carpenters Union. Got me a job and helped me study, and I got like a good ranking, and I got good pay, and he would drive me to work, and he would get to work like an hour early every day. He's a very, very regimented person, and I'd be like, why are we always early? Why? And then I had to relearn life, and then I just started pursuing it, and then I was on fire for the Lord. So at the convention center, I'd work for free. I'd work as the Carpenters Union, and you're dealing with all types of different religions, from Islam, Jehovah Witness, Sacred Name Movement, Henry C. Kinley, stuff people never even heard. You get all types of walks of life. So I was just an on-fire evangelism machine. So I was just telling everybody about Jesus, and boom, 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 and God healed me. And I still don't have a vehicle at this time. I just started working, and that was the thing. Even when I first got my check again, people would be like, they kill you with your words, like, taxes is going to kill you, and like you work, just be careful when you talk to people. A lot of times, like, it's like, here I am getting a job after like 4 years, 3 years, and it's like the first thing y'all got to say is like taxes, like, not I'm proud of you, like doing, and just small things like that.
People are usually very negative, and it's like you could be proud of yourself for doing something, and then as soon as you tell somebody, they try to crush your dreams, and they're like, it's not enough, you're not doing good. But what's crazy is people, when you start doing good, they want you to do good, but they also never want you to do better than them.
That's my famous line. That's one of my famous ways I think. I always tell people.
It's crazy because it's like you could be proud of yourself for doing something, and you should be. You very rightfully should be. And as soon as you start doing better, whatever, you could probably still do more. I'm not impressed. Yeah. And then as soon as you start doing even better than what they may have done, it's like, well, he's not really doing anything.
Yeah.
You can't really fall into the trap of looking for others for your accomplishments.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to say is success is the progress, and I say it so many times. I probably said it in every podcast at this point, but success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. So any step, like inch by inch, you'll make a mile. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Yeah. Anything towards that goal is then being successful. Now, success is a progressive thing. It's something that you realize over time. So just getting off of drugs and getting your life together, just getting a paycheck, dude, how like the level of success that is. You're not Elon Musk or like some guy making millions of dollars, but going from where you were to where you're at now is astounding.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get there. A lot of people would have died hitting their heel, or a lot of people would have died ODing on drugs. A lot of people would have died a long time ago. It almost sounds like a lot of things that happened in your life, it almost took you getting injured to stop and think. Like whenever you got injured, hurting your tailbone on the boat, you had to stop, think, reevaluate, go back to something else. And you got your jaw smashed in. Stop, think, reevaluate something else. And you got your stomach split open and all this stuff is happening. It almost sounds like somebody needed to punch you in the face to say, wake up.
You know, Joe, what's even like my timeline, so I get born again. Right after I get born again, like between like the time I met Dominic, or maybe right before I met Dominic, a girl from the church that I got born again at said, I can get you a job with a moving company. So I started working for this moving company, okay? And it was a bunch of like addicts and stuff, and you'd go behind on airline. It was like a real shady operation. And like we would go to people's houses, and you know, it was a company, and we'd move their houses and everything. Well, this company, they would like literally steal and do really bad stuff. Like everybody was on drugs, everybody was stealing and stuff. Well, and if you broke something, they would like lock up lock the door and say you owed this, like the scams you see on television.
Yeah.
Well, one time I was with them, and I just got born again. Everybody was stealing, they were trying on stuff, and I wouldn't steal. I was like, whoa, why are y'all doing this? Like, you know, I didn't steal. Well, that lady that they stole and they blocked up her stuff, her brother was like on a Mandeville Police Department detective, and I was like at a church retreat or visiting with, and I get a phone call from that girl say, hey, they're about to bring him to jail. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're about to bring the head person who owns this company. So it was all over the news. So my brother's still an officer. I called up JP and I was like, hey, Jefferson Parish. I was like, y'all looking for me? They said, yeah, we are looking for you. So I came in and I talked to the police, and the police said, hey, we know you got your problems, but I heard you're a good kid from your brother, and you know a lot of sheriffs know you, and you fell off into drugs. Well, everybody went to jail except for me. Like the prison, and then that guy was so mad at me, like, and then the girl from that church was like mad at me. Now she forgave me because it was her friend's husband that was the scammer, and it was all over the news, the company, and it was like a big old case, and a big old thing. He did prison time over it. But like another thing, if I would have got involved, because if I would have stole that day or got involved, I would have went to jail with them. There was many, I could tell many times, but when I got born again and started pursuing after the Lord, you know, I got the job at the convention center. Then I started just really hustling. But you know, it was a time where I would just go home at night and be at Dominic's house, and I would just break down the whole Bible, and I would just study because I didn't have anything else. Like people would bring me to like church, and like one time I was at this at a Wednesday night, and a guy, his name's David Brooks. He smashed a window on accident in his brand new truck, and he hit another brand new mirror. You know, his mirror's like $500, you know, and he stopped and put a note on there, and I was like, man, like, who's this guy? Like you just did that? Like
instead of driving off.
Yeah, like made it a point, and you fixed the mirror like that, and like just, you know, I got around those really solid people, and I started getting around like Bible studies.
It spoke volumes to you.
Oh yeah, and I was like, man, what are these people? And then really, when I got touched by the Lord, like I said, it was just pursuing after God, and then, you know, just the you know, and then, you know, fast forward, and even how I'm just married and met my wife and everything like that is all Jesus.
One thing I like to tell people that are looking for something, whether they're stuck at a dead-end job and they're trying to find something better, whether they're stuck in, you know, pornography or alcohol addiction or drugs or whatever it may be, where they feel like they're stuck, or even people that don't even feel like they're stuck, people that are doing good and just need something better, and it's not their purpose in their life. One of the quotes I love to refer to is, you may not know what direction you need to go in, but you do know what better is. I mean, sure, somebody could tell you, but you know what better is, and better will point you in the right direction. Your purpose isn't found, your purpose is forged. So through following better, whatever better may be, you knew better was just, hey, Mom, I got a drug addiction. Well, what do you mean, Vincent? You got a drug? I got a drug addiction. I need help. You know, you knew what better was. And pursuing better points you at least in a right direction. It may not fix the problem, but at least you're heading in a direction, like a archer shooting at a target. If you have no target, then what are you doing? You know, a ship without no port, where are you going? You're out in the open ocean. You know what I mean? You're essentially lost. But the whole point of that is that you know what better is, and better points you in the right direction. So whoever's listening to this, take from that and then your story that it's never over till it's actually over. My grandpa always used to say, another day above ground is a good day to me.
Yeah, and you said like better, and even just backtracking on my story about the uh, the crack cocaine and stuff. Just thinking when I'm thinking about Slidell, the only time I would come out to Slidell in the past from Metairie, that's where I was for drugs. And then who taught me how to like make crack cocaine? Like if the freebase was my aunt or my cousin.
And I'll say this for people who are listening or watching, because this will go all over the place. Slidell is right across the lake from New Orleans. So there's New Orleans, then there's a big old Lake Pontchartrain, and then we're right across. I think the Twin Span, or maybe it's the other bridge. It's one of the world's longest bridges. I can't remember.
The
but
Causeway is the longest bridge
yeah.
in the world.
Slidell is about 30 minutes from New Orleans.
Yeah.
People know New Orleans.
Yeah, and the thing was that even like you said, I knew what better was. But the thing is with people, if you're listening out here, don't ever think you'll never go to that place. Just like heroin, when I started doing pills, everybody said, "Oh, you'll never do heroin. We'll never do heroin." Then one night you find out, "Oh, heroin's similar," and then you snort it. Next thing you know, you start injecting heroin, or you say, "Oh, I'll snort cocaine," or "I'll never smoke." The sin will take you further than you ever want to go. And that was the thing. The story of my life was I was raised in a dysfunctional home, but I was a good kid. Like I never wanted to end up like this. I never thought that I would be involved in drugs. And nobody that saw me, they said, "Oh," in high school they would say, "Oh, he grew up dysfunctional and stuff," but they wouldn't see me that I fell into drugs. But just now understanding, like you talked about coping mechanisms, the trauma, like I didn't even realize until I started talking to Kayla. She's the one who helped heal me a lot, showing like, "Oh, this is why you don't really have these relationships," or "This is why you struggle in these areas," because the trauma that I had. I would always say, well, other people in Africa are starving. I sometimes do that. Or how can I complain when I have these things and I know other people? And Kayla's like, you need to understand that those things, you got to deal with them. And even just having to relate and saying, I miss my dad, or or rekindling. My mom got born again 5 years ago, and just even restoring that relationship because she really wasn't around. Like, that's the things that Jesus did for me. It wasn't like, oh, I just started going to church and boom. Like, it was a pursuit after Jesus, getting born again through the power of the Holy Spirit, the Lord speaking to me, and then just pursuing him with all my heart. And even like pursuing him, and then God just like put Dominic Hart in my life, put other people in my life, then put another person in my life that basically bought me a car. All I had to do was pay him back the money, like a monthly, bought me a car, got my license fixed, cleared up my credit. Like I was just talking about that the other day, like had the worst credit, defaulted on cars, defaulted on apartments. And the Lord the Lord, when I first got born again, he basically was just telling me like, just pursue after me, and all that shame, all that guilt, all those things that nobody, don't even worry about those.
With closing out the podcast, where are you at now?
Yeah, so the story of not having a vehicle, not having a job for all those years. Now I'm married for almost 5 years in November. I make 5 years. Meeting my wife at church. Her seeing the potential that God saw in me, even though I wasn't making too much money back then, even though I had a lot of issues as far as like a plan, and she knew that God had instilled gifts in me, and I pursued after her, and we got married. And now I had worked on the roof for 7 years. Right after I got born again, a year later, in 2014, I got a job doing tent installation on roofs. And I used to always think, man, God, why am I up here? Like, why am I on roofs? Like, I'm supposed to be a lawyer, like state police. I messed up all these different things, and I just was submitted to Christ, pursuing after him. And then I met my wife during that, working on the roofs at Celebration Church while I was on staff there. I was having to work 2 jobs, and then I got a vehicle and everything like that. But now in charge of a lot of different roofing crews. I'm second in line with Shiflet Roofing, which is one of the top 3 residential roofing companies in Louisiana. No BS. We really, and the Lord has just been faithful. Got, the Lord, they blessed me with the vehicle, the company, and then I have a brand new vehicle. I have 2 beautiful kids. I'm married now. It's like we always talk about in church, blessed to be a blessing. For me, those bad experiences and all the stuff that I put myself through with the drug and not having and going without and in and out of the mental hospitals, in and out of the rehabs, in and out of the overdoses and different things, that just made me now just be so grateful. Like I just so think about everything is just such a gift. That's why sometimes in church I just will break down or start crying, because I knew what it was like to have nothing. I knew what it was like when people counted me off. I knew what it was like when I walked around and with the neighborhoods and was just hopeless. And every time I got $100, the first thing I would buy is some heroin and go shoot it up. I didn't have any purpose, and God gave me that purpose back. And now I'm just pursuing after Him. And then even my wife, bringing healing in those areas that I wasn't able to see, like the trauma. Like when Joe talked about earlier, it's like, how did it make you feel as a kid? I didn't know how I was. I thought I was just supposed to be happy. Like that's just how I was taught. You have the nice stuff, you have this, you're happy. But at the inside, I knew that something was off, and I didn't realize that I coped with the drugs from, like, people call it self-medicating or whatever. It made me feel good. And that's why even my brother said, that's why I knew you were going to get addicted, or you turned out just the way we knew you would turn out, like being exposed to that. But I wasn't aware of those things, growing up.
With that being said, and I think your story is a great one, and that the best is yet to come.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think the best is still yet to come. But with that being said, what is words of wisdom that you would give to anybody that may have been in your situation, or somebody listening that feels lost or stuck?
The thing is, people say take one day at a time. You really have to take one day at a time. I think a lot of people who come out of addiction, they either see things so narrow-minded, like what are we going to do now, or they see things so far away. It's taking one day at a time, because a lot of us come out, our credit's bad, we have warrants and different warrants, municipal traffic. It's not as easy as just getting clean. You have damage, you have trauma that you caused, you've lost friends, a lot of people. So it's not just like, it was a whole lifestyle. So I always say it, James chapter 4 verse 7 and 8, those were verses in the Bible that really changed me. James chapter 4 verse 7, submit your life to God, resist the devil and he'll flee from you. And then the next verse, God will draw near to you if you draw near to him. And then the one, Matthew chapter 6 verse 33, seek first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. That's all I did. I didn't know any better. I knew when I got off of drugs and I got born again, I knew that I was going to seek God. I didn't do anything special. When people say, "Oh, you're so successful. You can travel. You have a beautiful family. You got all these nice things," and it's like, "What did you do?" I said, "All I did was submit my life to God and resist the devil and pursue after him." I went to church every time. I read the Word of God, and He aligned everything. And I just came to that place where there's just healing. And if you're out there and you're struggling with addiction, like, God sees it and it's not acceptable, but He's the only one that can change you. You're not going to be able to just change yourself, or, and those negative words or the trauma that you've experienced as a child or growing up. Nobody knows those things you went through. Nobody knows the pains there, but God knows. And there's a purpose and there's a reason why you went through those things. And it could be a testimony. And today is your day of salvation. Today's the day to just literally say, look, I can't do this on my own. Same thing with alcohol. You got to give it to God. All the alcohol, the drugs, the gambling, all those things, they're hindrances. If it's not one vice, if it's another vice. And that's why we really, when you get with the Lord and pursue His righteousness, those things will fall away. And there's a plan and purpose for your life. Like it says in Jeremiah 29, chapter 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord." It's a plan to prosper you, a plan to give you a future and a hope. I never thought, back in the day in 2010, when I was always having to rely on other people to have money, that I could ever bless people and give away to help people the way that we do. I mean, I could go on for days, the things, that we do in secret, my wife and I, that we help so many people. And nobody would ever saw that then, but God saw me as that. And I want you to start, if you're out there and you see somebody struggling, whether it's a child or a friend, start seeing them with the potential that God has for them. And if you're out there and you're struggling, or, even if it's just the pain pills or those things, and you think you have control of it, they'll sneak up on you. And next thing you know, your life could be possibly in shambles and you can lose everything. It's not worth it. And the only thing that I can say is, just pursue after God, get plugged in a church, read the Word of God, and God will open up so many doors, man. I tell you that my life, just dealing with so much suicide, so much depression, in and out of the hospitals, in and out of all the medications, taking them, at the end of the day, it's like, man, God is a healer, and He's real, and Jesus is alive, and He changed my life, and He will change your life. Yeah. And man, I just say, my testimony is not what what the past is, what's God's doing. And my wife and I have many kids that we help out, plugged in church and just being a pillar in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we are now. Went from being the I don't want to say the scum or just the worst of worst, and people like Baton Rouge police said, "Do not come back here." Again, I remember that last time. And then I go back there and I'm doing roofs and I'm helping out people and I hear those voice like, "Don't come back here." And it's like, man, like you've taken me so far, and God will take you to a place that you never could imagine, but it's one day at a time, and time is short. But look, give it to the Lord. Don't worry about what naysayers, don't worry about that credit problem, don't worry about the car issues. All those things, if you seek first the kingdom of God, He will make a way when there's no way. And He will restore you and make you whole again.
I think that's awesome. I think a lot of people, whether you realize it or not, will get something from this. And if you've gotten to this point in the podcast, and I may make it 2 parts, I'm not sure yet, but if you've gotten to this point, you've either 1, been very entertained by the stories, or 2, you're in the same place and you want to get better. So we'll never actually fully see the real effect that this episode will have on people, but just know that this will have an effect on people, and I think it's for the positive. I don't think there could be a negative way for this to affect people other than maybe they I heard about drugs. Start itching like the old what is it, the Chappelle skit.
I will say this one thing, man. My life now. My wife and I traveled, and people would said, "Why?" We went to California. I'll just say like 3 times in 2022. Went to Fort Lauderdale. We traveled Seattle. That's our thing. We
Yeah.
And the reason it is because when I was so in drugs, I never could go anywhere because you always needed the drugs and you couldn't leave because you get sick and different things. So the thing was, I always think, man, God, if you can imagine, there's a place where God wants to take you, healing, restoring relationships, traveling, things that you never even thought. Like I never thought I would be able to go see whales and take my family and have the 2 beautiful children. And people saying you're such a great example of success and stuff like that. It's like success.
And I'll tell the viewers this too. I knew none of this story at all before doing this podcast. I don't know if I said it in the beginning, but I said the only thing I knew was that you hurt your heel. I heard about how you jumped 2 stories off a building, and I was like, huh, that's pretty interesting. And just from others, I heard you had a pretty good story, but I did not know any of this. So again, I thought this was awesome. I had a fun time just listening and talking with you. But thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Y'all be blessed.